Well, it's another week and another onslaught of the fake news stories that are out there. And of course, CBS is joining other mainstream people on the attack, now labeling Infowars as a fake news website. They put out a little slide piece that's entitled, "Don't Get Fooled by These Fake News Sites." This is CBS News, okay? They brought you Rathergate and Saddam Hussein's non-existent weapons of mass destruction. So they also have Infowars and Alex Jones alongside The National Report or The Onion or Real News Right Now, all of which say on their About section that, hey, this is all in jest. The stories on the site are all satire. Of course, The Onion is one of the most well-known satirical news websites on the internet. So now they're saying Alex Jones, radio host and conspiracy theorist, is along the lines with the fake news outlets. I mean, regardless of the fact that we forced the mainstream media to cover a lot of stories like the ammo purchase, of course, by some different government agencies, we forced them to talk about certain stories that they refuse to discuss. Now, as Paul Joseph Watson points out in this article, CBS, it's very ironic that they would call anybody fake news because, of course, in 2004, 60 Minutes produced critical documents of President George W. Bush's service in the Air National Guard. The documents turned out to be complete forgeries. The scandal was so bad it forced veteran news anchor Dan Rather to resign. CBS News also dutifully spread the fake news before the invasion of Iraq that Saddam Hussein had mobile biological weapons labs. It's a story that turned out to be completely contrived claim from a notoriously unreliable source. And of course, this is the kind of fake news that when it happens, millions of people die, okay? It completely destabilize the Middle East. Hundreds of thousands in Iraq, thousands of U.S. troops. It ruined an entire continent. So that's the kind of fake news that you have to worry about from the lamestream media. Now, John Rappaport has a story up at Infowars.com talking about, hey, let's not forget about the fact that CBS will conveniently forget how it aided and abetted the CDC by censoring real news. Of course, the movie Vaxxed came out. It caused a huge scandal at the CDC. Longtime researcher William Thompson confessed that he and colleagues committed gross fraud in a study of the MMR vaccine. He admitted the evidence showed the vaccine led to a higher risk of autism in children. The finding was intentionally buried, and the vaccine was, of course, given a free pass. So, of course, audiences who are seeing this film have been totally stunned by these revelations. But, of course, the lamestream media, once again, has continually squelched any kind of pushback against vaccinations and could they cause harm. You know, meanwhile, they're paying millions every single year in vaccine injury related cases. So John Rappaport says, you know, let me take you back a little bit to an interview that he had a few years ago with Cheryl Atkinson. She was a reporter, CBS investigative reporter, a badass, one of the best in the business as far as I'm concerned. She was working on a swine flu story, and she discovered that the CDC had secretly stopped counting cases of the swine flu, while, of course, they were continuing to warn Americans about its unchecked spread. Oh, it's just massive pandemonia. Got to go out and get your flu shot. Swine flu is everywhere. People are all going to die. I mean, I'm sure you all remember how dire the story was about the swine flu, but the CDC wasn't even tracking any new cases of the swine flu, and that's the CDC's main job, is to count cases and report the numbers. So here's what Atkinson told John Rappaport at the time. She said, "We discovered through our FOIA efforts that before the CDC mysteriously stopped counting swine flu cases, they had learned that almost none of the cases they counted were swine flu. In fact, the swine flu, nor any sort of flu at all." And so initially, CBS was very interested in this story. One of the executives said that it was the most original story he'd seen on the whole swine flu epidemic. But then, of course, a lot of people started to push back, and they never aired it at all, never even went there. But, of course, she says that they continued to pump out numerous stories, pumping out this idea of an epidemic, not one that would shed any original angles, any new light on this hype. Fair, it was accurate, and it was legally approved. It was a heck of a story. But the CDC kept the true swine flu stats secret. It meant that many in the public took and gave their children an experimental vaccine that may not have been necessary. And of course, as they're pushing all of this pandemonium of the swine flu, then they cut to a commercial from the vaccine makers. And of course, that's half the reason why your fake news, lamestream media will not cover certain stories, much like the organ harvesting going on in China. Margaret Howell is going to be joining me in studio later on. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to be interviewing someone later this week who has been trying to get this out for decades. So this is a huge scandal, but you're not going to hear about that, but from the lamestream media. And now Paul Craig Roberts is writing, wondering if the U.S. government is behind the fake news media attacks on Donald Trump. This is Eric Zeus, and he says he's brought it to the attention that U.S. intelligence officials have placed a story in BuzzFeed, which of course everyone knows is a Democratic Party mouthpiece, that the Russian government used fake news to get Donald Trump elected president. BuzzFeed has this whole story out saying, U.S. intelligence officials believe Russia helped disseminate fake news stories and propaganda. Another U.S. official says this. Another intelligence official says that. And so they never go on to identify that from these intelligence sources. So it must be, who are these people? And they're portraying the president-elect of the United States to be a Putin stooge, a tool of Russia. How dangerous is this? And let's not forget that it was just on Sunday that the Pentagon once again came out saying that Russia is the #1 threat to the United States. So here again, they're really trying to, it's dangerous. The situation in this country is very dangerous to say the president-elect is a Putin stooge. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is saying Russia is our #1 threat. Now, you'll recall Romney actually made this point in 2012 in a debate with President Obama, and it was like one of the zingers in the debate because Obama was like, oh, let's, it's not the 1980s anymore, Romney, Russia. But now all of a sudden, this isn't a joke, and Russia is, of course, the #1 threat. So here again, this is going to be another fake news story that they're pushing out, which will drive us into nuclear war with Russia. Has the potential to do that. So it could be another fake news story that ends up killing millions of people, hundreds of thousands, ruining an entire continent. But they don't care, and they've proven that in the past, that they're willing to take the story and run with it regardless of the consequences.
Pistol. I ain't turning down nothing but my cow. Want that truth? Out. I'm trying to give it to the world before it burn up. I only know one way. Turn up. Turn